Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe the show where we tell the stories of the people here in Clarksville, Tennessee that make this place the greatest place to live in America. I am your host, Kevin Kennedy Jr. I'm a local pediatric dentist, Clarksville native. Once again, just meeting people all around town, Clarksville natives and newcomers, and just sharing the stories that are making positive impact all across every corner of our community. I've had this great privilege to sit down with people that I grew up with, all the way from people that I'm meeting just now, and that's one of today's guests. So I'm excited to bring you his story, to kind of tell you some of the backdrop. He's a Clarksville native. He's a small business owner in our community, a family guy, someone with just a great level of diligence, hardworking spirit. When you get to hear his story, you're going to find out more. I'm going to be learning a lot along with you as we unpack this episode, so make sure you stick in all the way to the very end. Our guest today is none other than James Hoskins, and without any more introduction, we're just going to jump right in.
All right, sounds good. How's everyone doing today?
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for making time. We were joking before we're recording this episode, a random Tuesday. It's like 3:05 right now. I said, man, I'm swamped. Like, I've seen patients 8 to 3 today, just kids right after another. And then you said, that's funny because as he phrased it, I've been rolling with monsters is what you said.
Absolute monsters. Just got off the floor, like average weight 210 pounds, and then me. So
yeah. And fun. So for the people who are listening to the audio of this and they don't see that our statures are somewhat similar, like, what size are you?
I was a much bigger man. I am no longer that. I weigh 165 now. I'm 5'6". I know some of you are laughing and saying he's really 5'5". I am not.
Yeah.
I am 5'6", 165.
Yeah, those are all the buddies that you text us to. They're like, oh, no, he's exaggerating. No, come and measure it up. Yeah, we got it. Well, I'm really excited to have you here. We met very, very briefly at a networking event several months ago.
Yes.
And I know your wife, your better half. She was my children's pediatrician while she was practicing here locally. Just a great family all around. So I'm really excited to unpack this story. First of all, we're going to start with you're a Clarksville native. And
yes.
So, you've seen this place. You told me right before we started, you graduated from Montgomery Central, crossed the river back in 86.
Yep.
Were you born here in town?
Actually born in Fort Campbell.
Okay.
But my family was here. My mother was here. My father was military, but he was also a Clarksville native.
Wow.
He just happened to be home from Vietnam.
Okay.
That happened. I happened. So came out of Campbell. Grew up here. Went to Barksdale Elementary School.
Wow,
grew up
cool.
in Lincoln Homes.
Yeah.
From there, my mother moved out across the river to the Cumberland Heights area.
Yep.
So I went to Cumberland Heights for a little bit for middle school.
Yep.
Then went to Montgomery Central because we went at that time from 6th through K.
Okay.
So from 6th through the 12th grade. I graduated in 1986. I'm a little bit older than everybody in the world. Seems
not older than the listeners. Yeah. I think this is what's going to be fun about this part is we'll get into it. And, I think you're defying your age because you're rolling with guys, I'm sure, who are a lot younger than you and teaching them some things along the way. Yeah, that's exciting. I grew up in Clarksville here too, and kind of have a similar story in the sense that, like, as Clarksville has grown, you often get shipped around from school to school.
Yes.
Like you didn't really just go to one school. I lived in the same house on the same little horse farm, and I went to 7 different schools in 12 years. I went to 3 elementary schools. I went to St. B, then I went to Burt, then I went to Northeast, then I went to Northeast Middle, Rossview Middle, Northeast High, Rossview High. Never moved. It's crazy.
That is crazy. All these different zoning restrictions. Yeah. But once again, that's the sign of how much the city has grown.
Absolutely.
In such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I love it. So from there, you joined the military.
I did.
And you became a combat medic is what you were telling me. And so tell us a little bit about your time of service and what were some of the things that you were involved in at that time.
So when I joined right at the end of 1986-87. Went first duty station, went straight to Germany. 18, that turned 18 in the air. So as I'm going over,
are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I turned 18 in transition to get to Germany. Was at Bad Hersfeld, Germany. For anybody who knows what that is, we're Black Horse soldiers, of the workhorse. So that unit is now defunct because our mission was to border patrol. So if anybody remembers the original movie Red Dawn, not the remake, but the original, in the first opening of the movie, they said the Fulda Gap has fallen, and that was where we were. So we were called the speed bump of Yusra. Our job was to exist 5 minutes if the whistle blew to hold up the Russians from coming across the border. And yeah.
So what was that like? 18-year-old kid, grew up in Lincoln Homes, graduated Montgomery Central. You're thrown all across the world, and here you are with such a, an important and I would expect you just don't know what to expect.
Well, it was terrifying because
okay, good. I'm glad you would say that.
No, that's
it
exactly
sounds like it is.
Yeah, that's exactly how they told us where we were. He
Wow.
said, "How many of y'all saw the movie Red Dawn?" And we're all like, "Yeah, it's a great movie."
Yeah.
Remember that part when they said that? Yeah, that's where you're at. And we're like,
Like,
oh
snap.
It's like
Yeah.
we don't. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, we're not expected to last longer than 5 minutes. You medics, your job is to make sure we last 5 minutes."
Wow.
So at the age of 18, I right off the bat is like, you have responsibility.
Yeah.
You are responsible for your troops. You're responsible for your men. Fast forward less than 45 days. So I just got there. 45 days later, we're in the field. And some of you may have heard of it or not. So there was the Hoensfeld incident. Was a major accident, training accident that happened over there. That was my unit. Mm-hmm. So I'm in my first mass casualty, 45 days in country, brand new medic.
Wow.
And we're right there.
Yeah.
So for me, that was, the military gave me put a lot of things in perspective for me. Before even going to war, like people talk about what happened in wartime, this was a training incident, and I'm sorting
You're really
bodies.
dealing with traumatic, heavy events.
Yeah, it was right there. So that made it real to me. Like the Army, like a lot of people, especially that time, we joined the Army to either get out of trouble, get money for college, or if you couldn't find a job, you joined the military. Sure. But most people didn't think of the military as being the military. So I always tell people there are people who join the Army, and then there are people who join the Army. And so I was in the Army. That made it very real for me.
Yeah.
But I atone it to discipline, because when people are like, why do you take orders? Well, you learn to take an order because someone telling you to stop could be the difference between you stepping on something you shouldn't, or getting into something you don't need to. So it made me very aware of why we do certain things. Like, of course, being a kid, they would tell me to do something. My first thing is like, why?
Why?
Right? Yeah. Which you should always question, not telling you shouldn't, but sometimes you need to do. Then afterwards, ask, hey, why did you have me do that? And if you have a good leader, hopefully they'll explain it to you. If they have time, they'll explain it to you beforehand. But sometimes, stop. Just stop. Don't go. Ask the question later. So the 3 things I got discipline out of that. The other thing I got out of that, I learned what hard work was.
Wow.
Because I was in Germany, and we had it's funny. I'll go back and look at those times. We had a record-breaking freeze. So it was 25 degrees below zero. The great Bavarian oak trees were covered in ice, and they were cracking from the weight.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm a kid from Clarksville, Tennessee.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, we don't snow.
If we get below 20, above zero, we're all freaking out, staying home. Trees are falling down.
So that was not my environment, and I did not like it. So we're out there breaking track pads. So I was in a cavalry unit, so that's mechanized tanks, armor, all this other stuff. Track pads on a M1 Abrams is 100-pound per. So we're out there helping them break track pads. So that's a 100-pound pad that we're moving in that kind of weather. So when people's like, it's hard work, I said, no, I've done hard work.
Yeah.
So the military have really helped me with perspective.
Yeah.
When people say it's a bad day or this, I'm like, I'll just kind of think about it. I've had bad days. Is that this?
Yeah.
And so.
And you served about 10 years.
About 10
and
years.
then transitioned into the civilian world. And I do want to dig into a lot of kind of what you've gotten into now, because I think the 2 points that you just mentioned, this ability to kind of put things in perspective, take orders, show some discipline and hard work is naturally kind of led you into your path that you are now. And so tell us a little bit about the business that you operate, the gym that you operate, because, I'm looking at it from the outside looking in. I've got friends who, are there a lot, and I kind of hear what's going on, but I don't really know what's going on. So tell us a little bit about it, and especially the name of it and what that means.
Okay. There's a lot going on. So we're Renzo, Gracie, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Combat Sports and Wellness Center. I know it's a lot to
You're
come
going to have to
out.
say that one more time.
Yeah. So Renzo Gracie Brazilian Jiu Jitsu goes back for the great Gracie family.
Okay.
They're credited with bringing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or Jiu Jitsu to Brazil and then to America.
So I know nothing. Like when is that? Is this like centuries ago?
Oh, actually not. In the 1920s.
1920. Okay.
So,
all right. Cool.
Some brothers, Carlos and Helio and a bunch of them, were students of Matsuma Maeda. I always mess up his name, so you guys can fact check me and go back there. But he was a judoka who specialized in ground fighting, which was jiu-jitsu. So as he was teaching these brothers and training them, and they got back to Brazil, they took the art and they refined it just a little bit further to make it better for them, right? So evolution of anything. Sure. So they took this art and they continued to use it to make it more applicable for what they were doing.
Okay.
So Carlo, both of them, they're 6-foot guys. Carlo was a bigger, beefier guy. Helio was a smaller of the two and a lot slimmer. Kind of like our stature.
Fair enough.
Found himself fighting the bigger guys and was like, how can I make this work for me? And learned that leverage, technique, patience, finding the space, all those little things actually gave him advantages. And then as they continued to use this technique and add more technique to it, they evolved a system, which they started to call Gracie or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, as opposed to the Japanese Jiu Jitsu. And it just continued to grow. So as they passed it down to their children, and if you do get a chance to look at the Gracies and the Brazilians, each brother had between 6 to 8 kids.
Okay.
So in large families, they continued to have large families. So it was a bunch of Gracies. But each one of them added to the art. So when I say, and some people may quote it, that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of the only still living martial arts, because anyone, and it's happening every day, can add to the art.
Okay.
You can take a technique that someone started with and make some modifications, and now you have a new technique. Or some of the things that once they told you never to do, now there's a new way to do it and apply it, and it makes it something.
Yeah.
So that makes me excited. So I always tell, like, if you're a nerd, there's a lot of science in jiu-jitsu. There's anatomy and physiology, there's kinesiology, there's geometry, and a whole bunch of philosophy. So you can get in there if you're
you can nerd out
all the way. Now, if you're just
books,
a bigger
YouTube videos, classes, whatever it is,
all of it, and that's what we do is teach the classes.
Okay, cool.
The black belt is called a professor for that reason. It normally takes anywhere between 8 to 12 years to get your black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
So like show up day one, know nothing, you're off the street. 8-12 years is this learning mastery process that gets you to that level.
We like to say mastery, but no.
Never.
That
never
gets
mastered.
you to your black belt. Once you get to your black belt, now you know enough to be dangerous. and then you start. Well, that's one of the jokes.
Okay.
You start, I'm a black belt, and I feel like now I'm starting to truly learn and understand jiu-jitsu.
Wow. That's cool.
So it's a never going, because you're always learning.
Yeah. So back it up a little bit. How'd you first get exposed to it? Because you're going from combat medic, 18-year-old, 28-year-old getting out of the military. You know, when did you first start to learn of the science behind it, and how did you know it was a passion of yours?
I wasn't exposed to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu until I was 42 years old.
So this is a long time afterwards. So we had a big gap in the middle.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Between there, like I said, I was Master Fitness in the Army, so that means we just basically learned how to work out and teach other people how to work out. Was working in the emergency room with some friends of mine. Had gotten way out of shape. I was about 240 pounds.
Wow.
Needed to get back in shape. Good friend of mine named Trey had me watch the movie 300. And I was like, a great movie. Loved it. He's like, we should do that. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do that.
Do what?
And he's like, no. He's like, I found out the workouts they're doing. Let's do that. So we researched the workouts. They were doing functional fitness. They were doing Jim Jones model. From Jim Jones is where CrossFit came.
Okay.
So we studied it. Didn't want to do a CrossFit gym, nothing against them, but we wanted something that was more structured. So we opened up a business called Circuit Athletics. We hired a bunch of trainers and stuff from Austin P.
Really?
That had
what year
degrees.
was this?
This was in 2007.
Okay.
So they had
and that was
degrees
here in Clarksville?
Here in Clarksville.
Okay.
They had degrees in health and human performance.
Okay.
Put them up under one roof and had some dynamic workouts. We're training people in all kinds of stuff. Met a young lady who came in to get in shape for a jiu-jitsu competition. ended up training her, liked the way she looked, saw her results, ended up bringing her on as a trainer.
Okay.
Had some great work, and she was constantly like, you need to try jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, no, I don't. I got these hands, got these muscles. I'm good, whatever.
I grew up in Lincoln Homes.
Yeah.
What do I need
like,
this
I
for?
I don't need this. You don't know this. You'll catch a fade, right? And she's like, all right, come on, get on down here with me. I'm like, and she proceeded to kick my whole butt several times.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, I
okay,
went.
you know something I don't know.
Oh, yeah. And then I went to, it was, at the time, it's called SSF. It's now Wildside. If you're looking to get into MMA or you want to cross trade, I'm telling you, go over there and check those guys out.
And they're here in Clarksville, too.
They're here in Clarksville.
Okay,
They're doing some amazing stuff. So shout out to Wildside. It was under different management at that time. Went over there. That's where I met Professor Brian Marvin, all these guys that were huge. And they just tossed me around. I'm like, that's not an art. That's just a bunch of big guys who throwing me around.
Yeah.
I'm not impressed. Fast forward about 2 months afterwards, I went to a seminar with Professor Samuel Braga, 145-pound man, multiple-time world champion. The same Professor Brian Marvin and bigger guys that was in there, he just was rolling them up, passing them around, and I was like, okay, what he did, I want to learn that. And they're like, it's jiu-jitsu. I'm like, no. You did jiu-jitsu. What was he doing?
Yeah.
And they're like, that's jiu-jitsu.
Really?
And I'm like, well, I want to learn his jiu-jitsu,
Cool.
not yours. And that's pretty much the focal point of what really got me in it and hot. Closed that business, but we had enough people training in the class that we made it a business.
Okay.
So we ended up turning that from that, and originally it was Clarksville Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Academy. We then became a Gracie Baja affiliate, which is one of the offshoots from one of the brothers. And then when Professor Marvin was like, hey, we're going to switch over to the Renzo Gracie team, we switched over to the Renzo Gracie team.
Okay, yeah. And so now you're located there, Warfield?
We're on Warfield Boulevard, 327 Warfield Boulevard.
Yeah.
Love the place. I've always wanted that building.
Yeah.
So it was a blessing to be able to
That
get
is
there.
yeah. So, for us old heads, that's the old Eddington's furniture store. So I'm curious in real estate sometimes. Was it just become available and you started talking to him at the right time, it just worked out, or was there something behind the scenes? How'd that come about?
No, it was just with all the above.
Yeah.
They had been vacant for a year.
Okay.
We, at that time, me and one of the other guys, we were looking to find a building where we could put jiu-jitsu and then a gun store on the other side.
Okay.
Drove by, loved it. I kept telling people, I wish we could afford it. Good friend of mine, Rosina McCrae, was like, did you ask?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, look at it. That's huge. Like, I
look
can't
at this location.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't afford that. That's prime location. It's the center of town.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to want ridiculous amount of money. We can't afford that. She called and asked him, set up a meeting, went in.
Didn't even ask
them.
you.
Yeah. She's like, all right, I called him. You need to go solve. So went over, talked to him. At that Mike, who was running the gun store, we went in, spoke to him. They told us what they wanted for it, and we looked at each other and was like, well, yeah, we'll have to think about it. And then we're like, are you kidding me? Yes. We're like, yeah, let's go.
Nice.
So it was amazing, yeah.
So is the gun store still there now?
No, unfortunately, last year when they started the whole, hey, we're going to come take your automatic weapons and all that stuff, the bigger chains started buying up all the ammo and weapons, so they squeezed us out.
Yes.
It was sad because we had a lot of great foot traffic. We just couldn't compete with the prices.
Sure.
So once the gun store closed, we moved into the rest of the space. So we grew into the space, and we're still growing into it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's exciting to know. It's really, kind of cool to hear your story of how you first became aware of it and then started to get into it more professionally, and you're doing things now. So for those of us who may not know anything about it, is this kid-friendly, kind of all the way up to, older guys who are, schooling younger guys?
I am the older guy.
Yeah, no, you are the older guy.
No, it is very kid-friendly.
Okay.
And it's one of the things that, so we kind of talked about it before. If you say it's jiu-jitsu for everyone, the answer is yes and no. It just depends on what type of jiu-jitsu you want and what your intention is. And then it's on the instructor to make sure you're getting what you're asking for.
Gotcha.
And I say that because you can be a competitor. You can be the guy who just wants to go hard and fight and do it, So you need to be in classes around people who do the same. You can be like me, older guy that's basically a hobbyist. I'm here to learn because I'm a nerd. I like the art. I want to exercise. Or you could be a young lady or a younger person who wants the self-defense aspect. And it is always self-defense, but you also, some people just want to get that part. They don't want to compete.
Sure.
They don't want to fight that, but they want to know that if someone comes up on me, that I can handle myself. Or I can tell a win doesn't mean that as a smaller person you submitted the guy, and by submitted I mean you either choked him out or broke their arm. A win is somebody attacked you, they did no harm to you. He or she is out of breath, and you're able to get up and walk away.
Wow.
That's a real win.
I'm also just noting that you said choke them out or break their arm in a sentence without taking a breath or blinking at it. So
very much so. So it's called the gentle art, because anytime you tap, right, that's it. So we call it slap and bump. Yeah. When we slap and bump, meaning we high five and we bump fists, that's an agreement that, hey, we're gonna train, we're gonna go hard, but I'm gonna respect you, you're gonna respect me. You're going to be able to go work tomorrow. I'm going to go work. So we're not going to hurt each other.
Yeah.
So that's what I say. That's a big part of what we have to understand in that culture. But with jiu-jitsu, it's joint manipulation, it's strangulation. Those are the things we're teaching. So when people ask why is it a good thing for children or women to learn, it's a great way to learn how to control or contain or if you need to stop someone from doing you physical harm.
Yeah.
Right? But you can train at almost 100%. And then get up and go do it again. So it's very, so for those people who are like, well, you can't do that. Like I've done karate, I've done all these other things, and we were sparring. We're like, well, you can't hit this person in full black because you could do a lot of damage. Yeah. So you really don't know what you're capable of doing or what you are capable of taking, unless you and your partner agree to full out spar or you actually take a fight. Okay. Right. But in jiu-jitsu, you can go and get to that point. You tap before they break your arm, or you go to sleep, but you can really go full out and understand like, oh wow,
this is a whole different world. I'm learning all kinds of things right now.
Yeah. So it's
there's a leadership podcast that I listen to of this guy, and one of the things that he talked about from a leadership development perspective is he always tries to add one discipline to his life every year, right? So they can be small things. And essentially his mindset behind it is, I want to teach my mind that when I set my mind to do something, I can do it. And I am a goal setter and I'm a goal accomplisher, right? So he tells the stories like, this year I tried to add Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And let me tell you, he's like, I have overcome all of these goals. And for the last, 10 years as he was adding these, he's like, this was a whole nother animal, but he's in his 50s, I think. And, he's like, I thought I was in good shape. I thought I could kind of handle and control my body. And, it's so much mental energy that goes into developing the mind and developing how to use your body in certain ways. He's, I've got 135-pound, young men just running circles around me, and it's embarrassing. So I got to get better, so the mental energy is like what he talks about. Oh yeah. Just continuing to develop this skill and just continuing to teach yourself that you can overcome, and the persistence and the, just determination that it takes to get in there and compete day after day, or however often people are coming on a regular basis.
Oh yeah. We always tell, especially new people, I say, try 3 times a week. Yeah. And then build up to it. So with us, at our gym, once you sign up, you have unlimited access. Yeah. So you can train 3 times a day or once a week. Yeah. It's whatever. You set your path and you can go.
That's cool.
But that's the first thing I do tell people. It's like, hey, this isn't like any other workout you've ever done. So first come in and feel it. Yeah. And then you can start to gauge it. We had a lot of guys, man, I thought I was in shape until I did this. So there's a difference between jiu-jitsu shape and just running or lifting. Yeah. Like I said, when I started, thought I was in good shape, thought I was strong, had good cardio. I ran a functional fitness gym. Sure. So you can't tell me. Now 3 minutes in, I was like, I can't breathe. Yeah. This is the worst.
This is the worst. So I love it. That's awesome. I do want to take a step back and, talk a little bit more kind of about your journey now that people kind of have a high level grasp of who you are, where you've come from, kind of what you did in the military, and now what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. But, obviously at some point you're getting out of the military, you chose to come back home to Clarksville. And what were some of the reasons for that? At that time, I think you told me you were getting out, 95, 96-ish time. So, why not choose a random spot on a map, what was special about Clarksville and it made you come back home?
Well, actually, I wanted to go to San Antonio.
Okay.
Love Texas.
Yeah.
Shout out to all my friends that are in Texas and to Texas itself. But family was here.
Okay.
Family was important, so we ended up coming back here to be around family. And then once I got here, the biggest thing I noted was, so once again, left in 86, came back in 95.
Okay.
I got back in 95 and saw the growth, right? So Clarksville had, at that time, grown again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the potential for growth. And because, like I said, I'd been here before, I was out, started working at Blanchfield Army Emergency Room, then started working at what is now Tanoa, at that time was Gateway.
Like the Publix location Gateway.
The Publix location Gateway. Met incredible people that helped teach me. So once again, had great leadership in the military, became a nurse, diligent about learning everything I could to be the best trauma nurse I could be. Got to work with some great physicians, got to work with some great nurses. And once again, that learning process. So at this time, even though I liked business, that's not where my mind was at. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this nursing thing, probably go to PA school, because I had a calling I felt to help people.
Sure.
And trying to condense it. So went from doing trauma nursing to working on oncology floors and then general surgery floors. So I actually got to work in just about every area of the hospital. For my old school nursing crew that worked the Gateway, you got shopped around. So you could come in the morning and work on one floor and finish on two others by the end of the day, wherever you needed to go. So nursing made me learn to be flexible and diverse.
The stories of that building, I'm sure they're good ones.
There's some great stories there. Yeah. Some sad ones, but some great ones.
I'm sure.
So once again, learn to, as a leader, adapt. Right?
Yep.
But as a servant, adapt. So most people are like, no, it's like, if you're going to lead, you can't do something, or ask someone to do something you can't do.
Right.
So if you're not willing to work a couple extra floors or move to another shift, or, it's great to be like, hey, I told you to do this, but it's better to be like, hey, I went and did this. Can you go do that? So once again, leadership potentials and things I learned from nursing that carried over in life.
Yeah. Did you ever work as a part of the staff at the new location for the hospital? Okay.
I did.
Yeah.
So when they redid the emergency room at Bach, they were also changing out over here, so I got to do both.
Yeah.
So that was always fun.
Yeah.
Got to see a lot of influx of new people and nurses. And if you have a nurse in your family or somebody you work with, give that person a hug. It's a lot of things nurses go through today really don't have the ability to talk about, but it's a lot of stuff that happens in there. So give them a shout out, tell them you're proud of them, because a lot of times it's underappreciated and sometimes a thankless job. Especially during the COVID area. So it was a lot of nurses that got blown out of the system. So
treating the welfare and the health of the general public in a place like Clarksville that's as diverse as it is, and really I think we can say that our town is fairly diverse, is a hard job.
Very much so,
constantly kind of I teach my team, you kind of have to be a chameleon in spirit, and you create the skill to almost kind of like barcode a situation real quick, scan it, who is this person, who's the decision maker, what are their values, what are their kind of healthcare biases they're bringing into the conversation. Do they already think we're trying to do too much because that's what they expect, or are they just deathly afraid of anything that they don't know what's going to happen, just anxious, nervous? You're constantly diagnosing the situation, and then it's the medicine on top of that, which is hard to do as well.
Very much. So see, that's jiu-jitsu.
Okay, how?
All right, so if I see a person, I look at you, I can't assume that, we're the same stature. I don't know what you know.
Okay.
So I have to be open to be like, okay, and I have to regard that he may be a black belt, or he may have this discipline under control. I don't know. All right, so I have to shift and adapt. And as we're moving, the way you're moving is going to tell me which way I should go. But I can't come in light and then you have the upper hand.
Yeah.
But I can't come in too heavy and then blow you out the water. So you have to adapt.
Okay. So that's some of that philosophy, mental exercise behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah. From my friends who do it, that's what they say is why they get addicted to it, right? Is that they're, in there they're rolling, they're on the mat. All this terminology y'all use. The rest of us don't know what you're talking about, but the challenge is so significant, mental and physical. And you can really show up to the gym one day and you got somebody standing in front of you and you might get unexpectedly rolled on, as you said. I love that. I feel like, as we're kind of rounding third and heading for home on this episode, one of the things that I really love about this podcast is we get to expose kind of the general public of Clarksville to things that they may not know about. And Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, especially in this military community, is something that maybe some people are not exposed to. So, I'm going to kind of give you the opportunity for a sales pitch here. Okay. But let's say, guy like myself, Clarksville native, the most combat I've ever had, most, kind of bodily injury I've ever had is getting hit by a baseball. I was like, that's not my thing, like I'm not trying to go and, get my arm broken or anything, but I am about personal development and I am about improving things, both from a physical and a mental standpoint. So if you're talking to somebody and they're just mildly interested, they have no experience at all, what would you say is kind of the reason that they should at least try it out?
Well, the number one reason goes with what you said. I'm not looking to get in an altercation, correct? Right. But a lot of times we're never looking to get in an altercation, but altercation comes to us. So it's nice to know that if someone did choose to attack me or my family members, that I could protect myself. Secondly, once again, if you're a nerd, and I always go back to my nerds, or if you're a problem solver, just look at it, watch a match, and be like, could I think my way out of that? Would I panic if I was in that stressful situation? Especially being a dentist and a physician, right? There's some things that you have to prep for, but you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
And then, like you said, you have to start shifting down.
Right.
You're playing A, B, and C.
Yeah.
So that's why I said a lot of these things are jiu-jitsu teaches you, okay, I see that. Let me now move to this, or I'm stuck here. So can I wait it out, or do I need to move?
Wow.
Right. So those are some of the things.
And these are instantaneous decisions. You're just developing the skill to decide.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
So I always tell people, if you have someone that's like, maybe they have a problem making decisions, you need to do jiu-jitsu.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, like from a therapeutic standpoint.
From a therapeutic standpoint.
Wow.
Then for the person's like, maybe I want to work out, but I don't like, we had a young man come to us. He's like, I don't like baseball. I don't like football. I don't like running. I don't want to do this. And he just, a long list of what he did not want to do. And I was like, hey. He's like, yeah. I said, you like superheroes? He's like, yeah. I said, you want to be Captain America?
Yeah.
He's like, of course. Yeah. I said, come on. We're going to do some Captain American training.
I love that.
And he's like, what? And then I'll show him a scene from a movie. I said, that's jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And like, are you serious? And then they'll do something. Hey, and they'll come back, John Wick. I'm like, yeah, you saw that. It was right there. And I was like, they get so excited. I'm like, exactly. That's like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. Once again,
yeah.
It's finding, kind of like you said before, going back to that barcode.
Yeah.
Scanning the individual, figuring out what it is, and then plug and play them.
Wow.
At our facility, we also offer boxing.
Cool. Okay.
We offer judo. We offer wrestling. We do have strength and conditioning. So if you don't want to do any of that, you can go in the back and just work out.
Yeah.
But all of that is so that you can be better at whatever it is you choose to do.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I've said it multiple times. I got no experience. I get, I'm not getting anything by having this conversation. There's no backdoor deal here or anything. But I love the fact that Clarksville is growing enough and that there are people that are expanding our community and adding value in our community to ways of, just different people that need different services. But it sounds like, you also get this opportunity to lead people, right? Just like the guy you just talked about. And so one of the questions we sometimes ask on the podcast is, where are you growing as a leader? And you mentioned this book you brought with you. Yeah. I'm going to show it up for our YouTube audience, Leadership Fatigue, authored by a friend of ours, a mutual friend. So when you kind of hit this on the prep guide, I was like, oh man, that guy, what an inspiration. Yeah. Carlos Serrano, Dr. Carlos Serrano, I should say, he is a local pastor, and just, I've had the privilege of serving with him on a nonprofit board for Manna Cafe previously, but just servant leader, big heart, and I'm pretty sure he could break all 200 and whatever bones there are in my body pretty quickly. So, but when you brought the book up, I'm curious, he's obviously just a high level academic, and I want to know what you drew from that book. It's called Leadership Fatigue, written by our friend Carlo. What stood out to you that you feel like has changed the way you view leadership in terms of your business and also personal life?
Well, both.
Yeah.
I would tell anyone, especially yourself.
Yeah.
The biggest thing about this is he draws from the book, and I don't mind quoting him because I read it. He just did it the other day on the podcast. He looked at General Petraeus and what he went through after being so very successful, and then his public basically debacle, and then how everything happened. So his thing was, how could this great leader that I served under, this man of great leadership skills and everything else, get caught up in such a bad situation and have so much fallout.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the way he handled it and everything else. So he referred to, once again, it's a Christian book, and I don't mind saying I'm a Christian for those of you who read, but he talks about the parallel of King David, Psalm, some of the others in here.
Yeah.
So what I like about it is, some people don't want to read a lot because it's a very scholarly book. So there's some stuff you may not want to read.
Yeah, he's legit smart, like brainiac smart. Yeah.
So he did something for me because I'm not that guy. There's Cliff Notes.
Okay.
So the great thing about this book is you can look right up front and it says, hey, if you want to find out about this part, stress and burnout, go to these pages, read these quotes, and understand what this is about. So he makes it almost like a guide.
Yeah.
So this is a good book for most leaders.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say I'm not a leader. Well, if you are responsible for paying people, are you responsible for anything that could affect the lives of others, then you're a leader.
Yeah.
Leaders get burnt out. The biggest problem with most leaders is we get to a position where we don't ask for help. Even from little things, like we think we have it, or we have to take it all on the chin and we just have to keep going, and you end up being isolated a lot. So the biggest thing I got out of this when I read it was, a lot of times we don't know that we're isolating ourselves. And that is something I was very guilty of. And when you're isolated, it's easier for, how's the saying go? Idle mind, idle hands.
Oh, sure. Yeah, idle, IDLE. Yes.
Yeah. So when we, as a leader, isolate ourselves, it's easier for outside or negative influences or whatever it may be to get in, and we don't recognize it. Right? So what was once we thought was someone being helpful, we didn't recognize that they're actually being hurtful. And since we're isolated, we don't have our team or someone else that can come in and be like, hey, that isn't good for you.
Yeah.
And that's how we end up in trouble. And that was a lot of what this book pointed out for me. Like, after reading it, I laughed, I joked, I said, man, you should have wrote this a couple of years ago. Could have helped me out quite a bit. And he was like, hey. But even as we were discussing it, he was like, I saw the symptoms. And I was like, so they're there. Yeah. So I say, even if you don't want it, it's probably a good book that you could give to the leader or someone you see.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel it, and like you say, you don't have to have some big organization with 500 employees. You just have to be in a position of influence.
Exactly.
Whether that's a parent, whether that's a volunteer coach, whether you're instructing a class or this or that, or you just happen to be the one who naturally makes plans for all of your friends to get together and socialize. Guess what? You're a leader.
Exactly.
When people listen to you and they value your opinion, you're leading something in one direction or another. And that leadership fatigue, it does set in. And, a quick symptom of it is I got to step back to just me. And then as you do that, you lose the value of your community. And I'm sure that's a really nice component of your gym as well, your business, is that there's a community of people, regulars, right, who are always, kind of there to help support one another. You're doing training exercises or you're doing your physical and mental exercises there with the services that you offer. But life hits too. And, when you've been around people long enough, you know people well enough, they don't have to say something, but you know something's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think Carlos' book is on Amazon. And if you need to, if you want a copy of that, we will definitely, either as Clarksville Vibe, shoot us an email, shout out on social or something like that. We'll figure out a way to get it to you for sure.
Yeah, it is on Amazon.
Yeah.
You can go straight there at Leadership Fatigue, order it. They'll ship it straight to you.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I love that. Well, hey man, we're gonna wrap this up and close out this episode. But this has been really fun. I appreciate you taking the time to do it. You know, after you've been, as you said, rolling with monsters, you know, getting hopefully not your tail whipped, but, you know, exercising, the, you know, the physical and mental energy. This has been really fascinating for me in a lot of ways because this is just a part of our, you know, culture in our local community that I don't really have any exposure to. I don't have any experience in. You know, I was stuck playing baseball, and then I went to the science lab and, you know, went through all those classes. Then now I've been in a dental chair for a long time. So it's nice to
time to get you on the mats.
I'm afraid my disability insurance would give me a big red stop sign on that one. Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you so much for this. Hey, if you've made it to the end of this episode with James Hoskins, I know you found tremendous value in the things that he was sharing, just his story, kind of the things that he is learning in the business that he runs here, providing influence and leadership in lots of different aspects of our community, both to our military families, civilians, whoever may be rolling through his place of business. So reach out to him, find him on his own social channels there, or just stop in the gym one day there at Warfield where he says it is, the old Eddington's, you know, furniture factory there. For us old heads have been around for a while. But hey, catch us on the next episode and we'll see you then. Thanks.